The last session of today is a panel with quite a few speakers. It's a panel about the challenges and advantages of creating a game remotely. The moderator, Arran, I'm not sure if he is already on board. There he is. Hello.
Hello. Hi there. Just unmute myself. I'm good, thank you.
I see your panelists are slowly joining. I could have been a panelist. I've been creating games remotely for 8 years.
Just stick around. Just stay here for it. Just have a little chat.
Yeah, no, actually, our team is like distributed all over the world. So yeah, be following this session closely to hear what you guys have to say about it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. How long have you guys been doing that for then, working remotely, like with that kind of approach? Just ever since you guys kicked off, or?
Ever since we guys kicked off, yeah. So that's about 8 years now.
Wow, it's really cool.
Yeah. I think you're complete now. So
I think that's everyone.
With that, I will mute myself. I will disappear, and I'll let you take it from here.
Bye, Martine.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you.
Howdy.
Cool. Hi, guys. Yeah, so thanks very much, everyone, for joining me to talk about the challenges and advantages of creating games remotely. I figured for the sake of everyone tuning in, it'd probably be a good idea for us just to kick things off with a little introduction about ourselves, just to quickly say, who we are and where we're from, and sort of what our approach to remote working has been for the last while. So I myself, I'm Arran Topalian. It's great to meet you all for the first time. I'm a senior game designer at Mediatonic, where I've been for about 3.5 years now. And for the last sort of year now, I've been working remotely as part of Mediatonic's sort of approach to handling the pandemic, as you might expect, here in the UK, specifically in London. What else have we got? Dave, how about yourself?
Hey everyone, my name's Dave Rohrl. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. I have been in games now for about 27 years total. Started working in remote development in 2000 when the tool set was nowhere near as rich as it is now, but did some external production then for games I was designing, and have worked off and on with internal and external design in the 20 years since. For the last 7 years, I've been running a mobile game consulting company called Mobile Game Doctor, which is actually a remote team of consultants working with remote clients. So I am doubly remote. So, and that's certainly been a fun ride.
Double remote. Wow. Thank you very much. And is it Fawzi? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Fawzi, that's right. Yeah, man. Yeah, that works. Right? Hello, thank you for having me over. Great to see a bunch of friendly faces. Dave, it's been a while. Luna, everybody. It's really good to see you all. Remote this time around. So yeah, my name is Fawzi Mesmar. I am head of design at EA Dice, based in Stockholm. I'm part of the studio leadership team. I look after everybody in design. That includes game designers, level designers, UX designers, anybody with design in their title will end up reporting to me. It's a fairly large team. Depending on the time of the year you speak to me, I have around 80 to 100 people in my team. I am responsible for the creative outlook of the studio, including all of our releases in the Battlefield franchise and the Star Wars Battlefront franchises. I've been in the games industry for quite some time, 18 years, no, not close to Dave, but getting there. My job is taking me around the world. I've been making games for quite some time on a whole lot of different platforms in a whole lot of different countries. Before coming to Stockholm, I worked in Germany, in Japan, in New Zealand, in Asia, and in the Middle East, where I'm from. So I'm happy to be here and talk to you guys about how the past year has been, I guess.
Fantastic, great to have you, dude. Thank you very much. We have Josh.
Morning, everyone. I'm Josh. I run Eastside Games. We're based in Vancouver, BC, and we remote like everyone else now, and we've we're always a physical studio, and now we've decided to give up our studio. We're not going back. We'll figure out what that looks like when the world reopens, and we work entirely remote. So it's been a big learning curve, and Eastside Games is a team of over 100 people now. It's weird when I say that. I never think was going to be over 100 people. And we're not only a game developer on mobile idle games, but we're also a publisher. We work with many awesome studios. Our favorite is the Mobile Game Doctor. They're our favorite people to work with in the world. Just because Dave has the best dad jokes. I'm sure he's going to drop a few. It's first thing in the morning though, so let him warm up. Yeah, I think a lot of people are in the same boat as well. It's about working, figuring out how to work remotely, but also keep the culture of having a game studio. So that's one of the things that we've been working on at Eastside Games. And this year we launched, I think it's 5 games or 6 games, and we have some more coming up as well. So we were really busy in sort of the pandemic lockdown.
Wow, yeah, I can imagine. Awesome, great to have you, man. And Luna, hi.
Hi, everybody. Nice to meet everyone except Fawzi. I've met Fawzi. So I'm Luna. It is 1 a.m. in Manila, so I apologize in advance. I will do my best. I am the creative director and one of the co-founders of Altitude Games. We are a mobile and blockchain game studio founded in 2014, and we have been remote since day one. We have about 43 people now, I believe. And yeah, I've been working remotely since 2008, actually, and I have been designing games for almost 20 years as well. So I'm excited to learn from everybody today.
+1. That's something that we've got a nice, really broad spectrum of people that have, especially, I hadn't expected so many of you to have been so invested in remote working for quite so long as well. So it's going to be super interesting to hear what everyone has to say. This is really cool. And last but not least, Martin.
Hi guys, I'm Martin. I'm CEO of Tiny Hydra. We do like custom tools and rapid prototyping for game companies all over the world. We're remote first, but I haven't obviously always worked remote. And I've been working in games for about 11 years, unless you count modding, in which case I've been doing it for 26 years. And yeah, all that time, mostly physical, but now fully remote.
Very cool. Awesome. Thanks very much, guys, for introducing yourselves. That was great. Yes, like I say, thank you very much all for coming along. I, for one, have definitely been looking forward to this panel for a while. Hopefully it's going to be of help and interest to those watching when it comes to creating games remotely. To that end, as you all know, I've prepared some topics in advance in the hope of sort of teasing out what I thought were some of the more interesting aspects to remote game development, which we'll work our way through with any luck, get through a fair few number of. So yeah, in the past year, obviously creating games remotely has, I think it's safe to say, been more of a requirement than a choice. But regardless, making a game and solving creative problems remotely, really kind of is a very different kind of beast. I never knew how much I would miss whiteboards in the last year as I have. So with that in mind, I guess kind of opening up with the first topic is what would you guys say have been some of the sort of main ways either yourself, your projects have had to adapt to meet working on games remotely? It's probably more of a question for people who've had to make that adaptation, but it'd be great to kind of get some insight into, to kick us off, sort of what those main challenges have looked like in terms of the adaptation process.
I'll start then.
Like,
Yeah. So while Altitude was designed to be remote from day one, we did have a physical office, and we used it for like co-working days, which were completely optional. But once a week, people would come in and kind of hang out, brainstorm. We would schedule all our meetings on that day. And that's been the hardest thing for us, actually, is letting go of the office. Not canceling the rent and the overhead. That was easy, but more like there was value for us in terms of like face-to-face collaboration and communication, and certain things like applicant interviews, performance reviews of people, like things that we preferred to do in person for that like human connection. So that's been the challenge for us, is even though everything else has been remote, the work has been easy. The personal connections, I think, is the thing that we most miss. Did I answer the question?
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. No, that makes a lot of sense.
So personally, I think it's a terrible time to be a micromanager, right? In the current remote climate. For those who feel like they need to know every detail of how things are getting done and when their employees are in, and they want to put their fingers in that, like, forget it. You don't have enough fingers. They're not long enough. Really, the kind of remote work setup forces a management style where you have to be really clear about what your expectations are, as well as what the whys are, so people can do strong independent decision making rather than relying on their ability to come tap you on the shoulder, and then really evaluate them and give them feedback based on their ability to execute at the level you need and in the direction you need, rather than sort of being in their business. It puts a really strong premium on communication, right, and your ability to sort of make yourself well understood, and on your ability to calculate time zone differences in your head. One of the things that's been interesting for us, we've been remote since day one, but everybody has always had their own sort of social orbit in whatever city they're in, right? We have team members in Thailand, in Berlin, in Arizona, Texas, you name it, Sydney. So we've actually started creating a lot of company internal social opportunities we never had before, because people are really struggling to get their social stimulation from outside. So we have a little coffee clash, we have a happy hour, we have, as Josh might expect of me, a board game night every week. So that's been kind of an interesting adaptation to the pandemic in particular, as opposed to a remote work adaptation.
I have a question about that, Dave, actually. So does that mean that even with 2020 happening and ruining everybody's lives, like that people are still able to have that social connection remotely? Because that's what I miss personally, is because Manila has been in lockdown like since March last year, and so we stopped like everything.
We don't get together physically. Every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time, we all get online with our morning coffee if we're here, or with our evening cocktail if we're in Thailand, hang out on Zoom, shoot the breeze. Fridays at 5 p.m. is the opposite, right? It's cocktails here and coffee in Sydney.
Yeah, we did quite a similar thing as well.
Yeah. Now I'm scheduling it in my head, like online drinking sessions. Anyway.
Oh, 100%. Actually, for my next little company festivity, I'm going to send everybody a really nice Negroni kit. All right, so you can all have the same cocktail.
Send me one. Yeah, I think what to just add on to what Dave said, the challenge there is also we've hired more people this year than we've ever hired before, because it creates a barrier. So there's challenges in the hiring in the pandemic that depending on where you live, it's hard to hire. So we've had to fall back and sort of hire most people in Canada for what we wanted to do for now, just because it's just been more difficult to, for example, we never thought about setting up healthcare in the US and stuff. If you don't know, it's a bit hard. You can dig into, you can Google that and look into that. It'll take a long time to figure that out. And then hiring in, trying to get everyone in our own time zone. But what you said about getting people together, it's really important for people that were like in the office. Everyone's just trying to survive and they figure it out. And so if you have events, we have like DJ nights on Friday and board game nights, we've got drag shows, stuff to just like keep people entertained. But I would say the biggest challenge is new people that you hire, because over Zoom, it creates a big barrier. Like when we're in the office and we do have open office, we used to have open office hours, and we'd have like, you could come and grab a beer or coffee, or we go have a coffee, and the founders, directors we don't have a lot of hierarchy at East Side Games, so we just all sit together and talk. But over Zoom with titles, people automatically say like, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't talk to that person. Maybe I should talk to my manager, and they talk to that person because that's how it was where they came from. You have to be very, you have to over communicate that to new people a lot. And so we've added two things. Like right now there's a Monday morning coffee, and then there's also a Thursday open lunch where, you know, directors, managers, founders are there, and we just talk about normal things. Because if not, the Zoom life just becomes about, we're talking about work stuff, and there isn't that sort of blurred line, which I think games and tech is really great about that. You know, there isn't a, you know, you don't, it's not like Mad Men. There's not a secretary in front of a director's office and you have to book a meeting. You could just pop your head in and say, hey, did you watch the Puppy Bowl? And talk about it. Yeah. And so it's hard. You have to really schedule and plan that out. Don't assume it'll happen. Or we found in the first 2 months, it just didn't happen. And the new people just didn't really have that connection.
That's a really, go for it. Sorry.
So we actually have had similar issues with onboarding, right? So it used to be you could have like long meetings or like long one-to-ones and like really do a lot of hand-holding with onboarding new people. And in like this distributed world, we've had to spend a lot of time on that, like figuring out some best practices to figure out how to get people from being like effective in like 1 to 2 months to getting them to being like effective in like 1 to 2 weeks, right? And so we've come up with some stuff for that, like low tolerance for cowboy coding and mobbed and paired programming exercises, and we really harp on reading documentation. But yeah, there's that challenge. One thing we do though, that really helps foster that connection and that flat hierarchy is like a weekly game jam, and just like get everybody and throw them in the deep end. And play together. And I think that has really helped us break down walls with new hires since we started doing that.
So this goes a little bit at something that Martin was talking about, but it's a question for those of you managing larger orgs. The nature of my company, it's a consulting company, it's fairly small. All the people I bring in are fairly senior. So, you know, getting a senior person up to speed on a project they're going to work on very independently isn't very difficult. But I've heard from a lot of friends and a lot of peers that it's a really, really difficult time to sort of spin up more junior hires at this point. And I wonder, is that an experience that you all are having, right? Seeing that big differential between bringing on junior versus senior hires and how you're attacking it?
So it's a very interesting thing because like like we've had a bunch of people coming onboarded into the company during the pandemic, and for a lot of these guys, like they're coming into the company, for them like the studio is maybe 5 people, because that's the range of the people they interact with on a daily basis. And then they come into like a studio meeting or a project meeting and they go like, oh whoa, there's hundreds of people in attendance. And they kind of like get the scale during that project. And as part of the people that we've onboarded, we have onboarded intern team members, and we have onboarded junior team members. And there's the logistical challenges that, you know, this distributed world of like, you know, getting the equipment over and getting those people to kind of like get the setup happening, and all of this has been something that, you know, we now got much a lot used to. At this point, it was kind of interesting to figure out in this time last year, I guess, or like March last year. And we found like you know, like the buddy system kind of works really well also within a remote environment. If it's if you like, you know, stream your day, so to speak. So like think of it as like, you know, a buddy Twitch day. It's like, you know, you're onboarded to the company, and then people like jumping in and out, and then people interacting with what you're doing. Or like as you're working, you can your buddy or some of the more senior team members will come in into that room, check out what you're doing, help you out, give you pointers, and help you in onboarding some of these things. So we found that creating virtual environment in which like the 2 people are kind of working together, 2 people at least are working together across a longer period of time, say last week, will enable people to kind of get to know like the lay of the land and how things work. We have large-scale onboarding sessions in which, like, a senior team member will host a session every month or so for a lot of the newcomers will come in so that they're onboarded into the project and what's going on. And we have a bunch of virtual networking events. There's one I do for design because we're such a large team. Like I said, we can be up to between 80 to 90 people at some stage, and not all of them have met each other in the real world at this point. I do like once or twice a week. I call it the virtual water cooler, in which I hold a Zoom meeting just like this one, and then have everybody join in, and then I split them into smaller groups, like in breakout sessions, and then they just talk to each other about stuff, and then they come in, we randomize the rooms, and we send them off again, and we do that a bunch of times, so that people just get to meet and get to talk to each other, get to know their colleagues, and something of the sort. It's we do what we can with the tools we have, but it has been like surprisingly useful.
Do you find that kind of helps build up a sense of culture as well for the studios or companies that you work at? Because I mean, a big part of Mediatonic's sort of soul and vibe is, kind of really capturing a sense of togetherness and culture, so that when you come to the office, you really feel that you're at Mediatonic, or you feel like you're part of that company, and you understand what it stands for, and the sort of vibe that comes with being in a physical place alongside other people. And it's hard to quite put into words how that kind of sense of culture is crafted, is put together. But do you find like things like that, like having these sort of online sessions and these coffee calls or these DJ nights, that these kind of things can help foster that sense of culture? Or is it a separate beast entirely that is something that's a little bit harder maybe to do remotely? Or can it be done sort of, do you think, just as effectively remotely?
I mean, I personally think that it can be done just as effectively remotely. Like, we started like a bi-weekly D&D session on Thursday nights. We have so we partnered with another company here in the Netherlands called Funbase. And it's like a gaming community that used to have a physical location, and they took all their stuff online during the pandemic. And so like we have like our own rooms for participating in that. And like we just try to encourage a lot of those virtual sessions. I mean, like we're all kind of stuck, but I've definitely been at places during my career where like the culture was not as cool. Now I'm biased, right? I'm one of the founders or whatever, but I've definitely worked at places where I was like, this is just not that great comparative to what we have today. Like I feel like everybody who comes in within like a couple of weeks, they're like really solid, excited about jamming on the games, excited about D&D, excited about like after work play, and just the way that we engage too. So I think that you can have that really strong culture in a distributed space. And I think a lot of people have proven that too. Like GitLab, obviously like they're a huge remote first company. Moon Studios, like I think they've managed to put out the Ori series and have an awesome culture. And they're completely remote, as I understand it.
I'd like to answer that too. Oh, sorry, Josh, you want to go ahead?
No, you go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So interesting that we're defining culture here as like people getting to know each other and like connecting that way. But also for me, a lot of our company culture comes from our chat, because we're mostly remote, or now we're fully remote. So we have all the different Slack channels for all the different topics possible. And I found that to set company culture, like you kind of have to go give the example of, okay, so what's funny? Like what's acceptable? Like what are people interested in that we're going to talk about? What are the things that we don't talk about? And so we've had to set up a bunch of rules. Like we actually have an employee handbook, which we have everybody like read when they come in, and they kind of know, okay, this is what's safe for work to talk about. And then obviously when you would join, you kind of get, oh, this is the sense of humor that people have. And then you kind of find like people creating their little pockets of, there's a food group, and there's, a news group, and like you have all these, like there's a fighting game group, and then people are kind of breaking out into these little channels, and then everything is open as well. And for me, like as a founder, my challenge has always been, how do you kind of police just to make sure that everybody feels comfortable in these different topics, different genders, different everything. Because in the office, like it's if it were a physical office, like it's easier to have these kind of private conversations, but in chat, like everything is open and you could say something that is, you know, like, oh, that's not what the company stands for or anything. But I don't know if that's too serious, but that's always been a challenge for me, is like how to make sure that the Altitude company culture stays no matter like who we hire, and no matter what kind of issues happen in the world.
Yeah, it's specialization. So we specialize in, you know, when we do our game design, we specialize in the segment. When we do UA or when we build games, we have to do the same with how we do operations remotely as well. So same thing, you have to have your HR really being detailed and communicate what exact policies and procedures, what you can and can't say. And, you know, it's, for us, it's brought up a lot of training, just to, because we're communicating, bringing in different speakers to talk about issues and how we're going to improve as an organization. And then on the culture side, you have to have somebody, if you have over 25, 30 people, you probably should have somebody specialized, kind of like you used to have somebody that would manage your office. You need somebody to now manage the logistics of your culture, because it's all about the small details. And I'll give you an example, if there's anyone out there that's thinking, you know, what they can do, is one of the small things that we do that paid the biggest dividends is we would send out basically build ESG from home kit. So we'd have everything from wall decals to like the banners over there. Can't get the Crown Royal picture, that's custom just for me. But you can get most of that stuff. You can order swag from a website that we made that looks like a old GeoCities website, and then each thing comes with a signed card. So if I can't do the signed card because we're in and out of lockdown, the person that's doing it will usually deliver it in person with signed card, with treats for something. Those small gestures go a long way in welcoming somebody to a team, because in a time when, you know, we don't have any physical contact, and almost everyone is in or has been in one stage of quarantine, lockdown, you get a letter in the mail, or you get somebody that, you know, safe distance drops off a new hoodie, a banner, 6-pack of beer, and a signed card for you. You see people put that card up, or we'll take a picture and we'll tweet that later, because, you know, there's never been a more fun time to get mail than right now. It's so weird. So do that. As a founder, you can sit at home and bang off cards for people, and they'll appreciate it. It's ways that we could connect until we can meet in person, I think, is really important right now.
So, you know, one thing I will say, no matter what handbooks you put out, no matter what your policy says, right, a lot of company culture comes from people observing how leadership acts, right? Company culture descends from, you know, kind of the C-suite and percolates down layer by layer, you know, and ideally in kind of a linear fashion. And one of the things that I think is harder in, you know, our current like mandatory distributed environment is that visibility, right? I think Josh was talking about some really good solutions there in terms of making sure that you have some kind of individual contact between the CEO and new hires. But I think it's really important for leaders to take pains to be visible, whether that's through these social engagement hours, being a real, you know, presence in your company Slack or Discord, but showing people how you think about the business and how you handle the business and how you think about customers and how you think about partners and so on is going to do a lot more to shape what your company culture is operationally than almost anything you can say or document about your company culture.
Oh, 100%. Like on Slack, like all of us in the executive team, like we're just there all the time. And we're commenting, like everyone is commenting on everybody else's work all the time. So in terms of like game development being flat, right? I found it's much easier to do that online, actually, just because if you wanted to comment on someone's artwork and they weren't on your project, you would have to physically walk by their computer and be like, hey, that's cool. But now, you know, all the channels are open anyway. And so everyone's just kind of giving feedback to each other, including us. And in terms of giving like transparency to people online from the executive team. We have a weekly meeting every Monday morning. That's how we all start. And we kind of talk about, okay, these are the deals that we're looking at. You know, this is the current lay of the land. These are the people we're thinking of hiring. Like, we're all being very transparent and people can ask questions. And we did hire an HR associate very early on. And we're only about 40 people. And I got used to like being in a small studio without an HR, but we hired someone early on, specifically so people could ask her things if they felt shy about asking us things. And it's been really fascinating because they would send her a question and then she'll come and say, okay, so this anonymous person is asking about this. And we're like, so who is it? She's like, I'll never tell. And I'm like, come on, is it so-and-so? And she's like, no, I swear I'll never tell. She never tells. It's really impressive. But like just having that kind of avenue where people understand that you can like ask like the CEO something, because in real life, it would be difficult to approach the CEO, you know, if you didn't know that person. But yeah, I agree with everything that you're saying.
Yeah, I did a bunch of contracting at Wuga when I was starting Mobile Game Doctor, which at the time was about 300 people in Berlin. And, you know, they actually had an incredible culture of transparency, right? Jens Begemann, the CEO there, I think has a remarkable style. So, you know, every Monday morning, there would be a big all company, you know, kind of update with stuff from a bunch of leads. Every quarter, he would do a literal, you know, ask me anything, right? So people would submit their questions and they would get voted up or down. At one point, I was in a meeting where he took a screenshot of the company online banking to project the bank balance for the entire company, right? Which I thought was pretty remarkable. But yeah, having that kind of visibility, I think, really helps.
Makes a lot of sense. Like you sort of have it where, you know, people learn from example, and especially when you've got people in more senior or higher roles, that's even more the case, right? Is that, you know, seeing people set these examples very much like trickles down. That makes a lot of sense. I totally get it. We've talked a lot so far about, you know, how to improve or sort of mitigate some of the disadvantages potentially of working remotely, in terms of people feeling a bit more isolated, or maybe people, especially new people coming on. But you know, like a piece of music, it's the spaces between the notes that, you know, make the tune, right? So how have you found sort of, and I don't know if anyone else has had the same sort of like issues with it, is how have you found separating your work-life balance when it comes to working remotely on games, if that's been a problem for you at all? Like I personally tended to find that, you know, working remotely, if anything, you feel, because, you know, you're sort of blinkered into the screen, and because you're working maybe from home a little bit more as well, maybe you have an office, in which case maybe it's less of an issue. But for myself, at least, I've been working from home, and if anyone else has had that kind of situation, how have you found making that distinction between, okay, now, because when you're obviously working in the office, you put the stuff down, you leave the office, you come home, and that's you in home mode. Have you guys found that at all?
In our study, we wanted to really encourage everybody to find a work-life balance and what they're doing, but also, like, you know, to be really take care of themselves in this difficult time. So we made sure that there's on a daily basis, we have multiple reminders in people's calendars that this is now your back reset time. It's now the stretch time. So I have like 15 minutes every day in which, like, this is when you need to stand up and do stuff. We have guided meditation every morning for everybody to participate in. And we also have guided stretches, exercises on a regular cadence. We do that. When the weather started getting better in Sweden, now we're covered in snow. But when it was when things was starting to get better over here, we ran a bunch of challenges and exercise-based challenges in which, like, groups of people were encouraged to take walks or do jogs or do any kind of sport activity, and then log it into an app that we've created specifically for this, so that you can see where you stand on the leaderboards compared to other dicers. So we've been encouraging a lot of like sport activities and all of that, and I think we give gifts or rewards for people who step away from their desk every now and then they do a bunch of exercise throughout the day. We run surveys frequently to make sure that everybody has the proper setup at home. for remote work. So make sure that they have the right equipment, that they have the right seating situation. We've added, as part of our onboarding experience, an ergonomic training. So it's kind of like you do the security training, you do like all the kind of, you know, like corporate trainings that you need to do as you join the company. And now we've added one that basically checks that you know how to sit properly without hurting your back, to part of the onboarding process. I am terrible at this, by the way. Like everything pandemic wise, terrible at. I cannot sit straight. I'm always touching my face. It's a miracle I'm still alive. But like we've tried to add all of these things to kind of like encourage people to maintain that that balance. We run service checks on a quarterly basis to part of the questions in that you know, satisfaction survey, to see how people are feeling, but also to see they have questions deliberately around the work-life balance to kind of keep tabs about how that situation is going. And like for there are individuals where like because of their living situation, they can't really step away from the computer at the end of the day, because like they live like, you know, a small apartment or something of the sort. And we know we can identify who those people are, so that their managers are aware and they can manage the workload accordingly, and they can talk to these people regularly and make sure that they're doing okay. So we're trying to create that kind of balance in a way that is also not too intrusive, I guess, but just make sure, you know, like log out, go take care of yourself every now and then.
I think it's important what you should do all that stuff. It's important that it's not working remotely, it's working remotely in a pandemic. And so we're just all trying to figure out the best way that we can keep people safe and get through this. And it's not going to be like this forever, and it's going to get better, but you just have to make sure that, you know, you're talking to your leadership regularly and say, like, you know, one of the questions right now is, what do you do with kids? You just have to really communicate that. We use Slack and Times in there to do what you can. If you have to go pick up your kid or you need a break, take a break, and we're going to have to be flexible on work hours. I'll tell you this, the more services you can provide for your team during this time, you might not see a lot of engagement, but people really appreciate it. So if you can bring in somebody to talk about ergonomics, that's great. We give a little bit of money for your phone and your internet, and people really appreciate that. And we have weekly exercise programs that we've been doing since the start of the pandemic, because we used to do that as a team. And we find people with kids, the best way to calm down the kids is do some boxing with the kids for 30 minutes, or just get your kids to do that, and then you get a break. But it's just all about, I think it's just all about flexibility during this time. And when people, I spoke to a bunch of kids this week, like grade 10 to 12 students. And what I said is, do whatever you need to do to get through the pandemic. If it means you're playing too many video games, so be it, but do whatever you need to do to stay inside when you can and stay safe. And it's not like this forever, it's just like this for now, but it's not like normal working from home. It's normal, it's working from home in a time when we've never had to do it before.
I mean, we kind of all live at the office now, right? So there's a lot of peril around work-life balance. For me, I found is less of a hazard for my team members that have kids at home, especially older kids, or have spouses, have lots of pets. The greatest hazard is for, you know, those folks that are single and live by themselves and have really restrained social life. They totally get sucked in. I was listening to an interview on a podcast recently, actually, with some folks from Supergiant Games, with the leadership team over there. And they actually have a really interesting practice. They take their Slack down from 5 p.m. Friday to 9 a.m. Monday every weekend. They just say, we're going to take, you know, the communication trunk offline. Everybody can know, like, if there's an emergency and you're needed, then, you know, we'll call you, we'll text you. You don't have to worry about checking Slack. It's all good. I think really enforcing that is kind of a really remarkable statement about how strong those folks feel, right, about sort of creating that work-life balance.
Yeah, we've never really thought of doing that, but like that's definitely something that I'm going to consider now, because like I think one of our biggest dangers is over engagement, right? like we're in this industry that everybody's so passionate about, and you know, there's this, especially with the people who live alone, there's this tendency to just throw yourself completely into it. And we have like this one guy, you know, like I said, we do these weekly game jams, and I'll be getting Slack messages from him on like Saturday, Sunday, being like, oh, I just solved this problem. Oh, I just did this thing. And I'm like, dude, put it down. Go have a weekend. You know, like, and as leadership, we have to be really cognizant of that and really foster good habits. Like, tell people to go take a walk. If people need a mental health day, then like they need a mental health day, and that's okay. Like, we're all living with this, and we all just have to live our truths.
Yeah, awesome, really good points. It's some of the examples as well that you guys have brought up. Like, I hadn't heard of that podcast myself, Dave, from Supergiant, but that's super interesting. That's what they do. And the idea as well, sort of like gamifying spare, like free time and making sure you're taking breaks and stuff. That's just super. I think that's fantastic. Like, what better way to make sure people do it, right? Just add a prize. It's gonna people are gonna engage. That's fantastic. We've not got too much longer left, so there's one more thing I wanted to bring up before we kind of hit into the Q&A, which was, how have you all kind of found, obviously, you know, this industry being a very creative one, centered around ideas and designs and that kind of stuff. Like, how have you found ways of communicating those kind of things effectively when working remotely, or clearly for that matter, when working remotely? Because obviously when you're working in an office, you can sit down together, you can doodle on a piece of paper, you've got the whiteboard there, whereas remotely, maybe it's a little bit less friction-free.
I'll take that one, because we discovered something just during the pandemic, which sounds silly because, again, we've been doing this for a while. But so in my small team, we started using the draw tool in Slack calls, which is like, it's always been there, but it's just that we got used to, you know, daily stand-ups, and nobody would share their screen. They would just be talking, or you would be chatting or typing in a document. But we have a small hyper casual team. And so what we do as part of our daily stand-up and our huddle is we share the screen. We're looking at whatever the art or the prototype is, and everybody just goes and draws on things. And we've become so reliant on it that when I have like a Google Meet meeting with somebody else, I'm like, where is the pencil? Like, I'm so irritated that I can't point at something. But that has been like the greatest discovery for me, is exactly that, like replacing the whiteboard, which is, we've tried a bunch of whiteboard tools as well, but it's not the same, like to just like talk and point and draw, and everyone's drawing and stuff. And it's really great. So that's my great discovery of 2020.
I'm just going to say, in 2003, when I started building remote products, I'd done a little bit in the 90s, but got more serious about it when I was building the Pogo download business in the 2000s. I used to do, you know, whatever, a 50, 70 page GDD, ship it off to all the participants, right? Track progress and deadlines in an Excel sheet that lived in my desktop that I would email out to everybody and get people together. So, you know, thank God we're living in the future, right? Where we can all like jump on a video call and, you know, draw on the screen and whiteboard stuff together, whether you're doing that inside the call or in a separate window, right? In a Google whiteboard or whatever, you know, that we have all these incredible documents that we can sort of jam on and edit at the same time. You know, next, I think we should all just jump in our rocket cars and, you know, sort of all park together to have coffee remotely through the windshields.
I mean, so we can't look over each other's shoulders or anything. And yeah, we don't have that shared whiteboard space, but we do have the digital whiteboard tools and the drawing in Slack, which I've actually made use of that myself. I would say though, that in some ways it's additive, right? There's this separation that's created by these video calls where you sort of have to listen and you can't just plow through someone else. And there's a tendency when you're in a collaborative space together for somebody to own the conversation, right? Their energy is just so high, they're really on it that day, and they're like super passionate, and they tend to drive everybody else under a little bit as they like pull through with their idea. And, you know, like a lot of people are self-aware about that and good about working around that. But I think that there's also but now with distributed communication the way it is, distributed collaboration the way it is, there's something really good about that, in that it makes us give space to a lot of, to everyone really. Like, you start to notice when people aren't talking more for some reason, because the energy's sort of flat. And while, like, yeah, a lot of people feed off of that energy, there's also this really good space for collaboration now, and hearing everybody, which I love.
Yeah, no, I think that that definitely makes a lot of sense. Thanks very much, guys. I, for one, definitely know what you mean. Like, there's a certain energy that comes from a meeting when you're in it, you know, physically there. So when you're in a call, there's a certain sort of new language that's come up where you would think, you know, before this all kind of kicked off, you would think this would just be it would be so difficult and almost kind of like a disaster to try and hold this thing regular. Like, everyone's going to be talking over each other. It's going to be difficult to kind of like monitor, you know, when and how to take your turn to talk and stuff. It just kind of somehow works and pans itself out, and you do end up with this sort of slightly more, you could say, open space, like, you know, easier to access kind of space for sure. Yeah. Thanks very much, guys. I think that kind of takes us to the end of it, right, Martin? Are we into Q&A now?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're already a bit over time, but you guys are in luck since you're the last session. So we do actually have some time to also take some of the questions that came in. In the Q&A, there's one question waiting for you guys. It says, Anonymous attendee says, great panel, everyone. When the pandemic is over, do you think remote will stick around for those who benefit from it, or will we all be too eager to get back into the office?
I personally don't want to go back to my daily commute.
I think we're going to buy a brewery, and we're going to convert the front of the brewery so you can stop by and have a beer at any time. Stop by anytime, Dave. I know you'll like that. Yeah, just a hybrid solution. I think we could do something cooler.
For a job there.
Josh,
yeah,
for sure. Me too, actually.
Josh, I am a passionate brewer. I will come and help you with that project.
See everyone, right away I solved how you can get people to apply to your studio. You buy a brewery and you do that. But I mean, I think the point of that is you could just do something really cool. I think we can do something a little different. We work in games, hybrid solution. We're going to have pockets of developers all over the world. So, yeah. Let's do that.
One of the things we didn't talk about, by the way, I love leveraging time zone differences, right? I love being able to have like producers or art directors, right, that are on different shifts than the artists and on different shifts than the programmers, so that the artists and the programmers can deliver, and then the feedback can be sitting there in their inbox for a full day by the time they come back, right? Like that kind of remoteness can work in your favor if you really think hard about how to leverage it.
That's really meta.
Yeah, in our case, we've always been we've always supported remote work. We've always had remote workers on staff. We've built a bunch of games with studios in different parts of the world. We've collaborated with. We've built multiple games with studios on the West Coast while we're based in Sweden. So. Remote work has always been part of our DNA, and that's unlikely to change after the pandemic.
And I think that is a really good closing thought. So I'd like to thank all of you, Arran, Dave, Martin, Josh, Luna, Fawzi. Thank you so much all for a really great panel. This was an excellent way to end day one of Pocket Gamer Connect Digital number 5. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, everybody.
You're welcome. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.